All right, so now that we have our sufficient and necessary conditions down, how do sufficient and necessary conditions differ from sufficient and necessary assumptions?
So is it that the conditional, I don't know if I can explain.
So the conditionals are just statements. They're just
Right.
statements in argument. A necessary and sufficient assumption is the unstated premise that's either sufficient for a argument to be true or that is necessary for an argument to be true. So they're both unstated. They're both unstated, where conditional statements are very much stated in the argument, correct?
Yes.
So on the LSAT, what we have is we use premises, or they try to use premises to get to our conclusion. However, most of the argument's premises do not add up to the conclusion, correct?
I'm sorry, can you say that again? Most
of the arguments, the premises that they give us do not add up to the conclusion, correct?
Right, because they're not valid arguments.
Yes, they're not complete. And
right.
So what I really say is this is our argument spectrum, and what we want are rock solid arguments, but most of our arguments are not rock solid.
Yeah.
And so if we were to say, let's go back to what was Zach's example. If you take the SAT, so if you take the SAT, you will go to college. So let's say that this is no longer our conditional statement. Let's say that our conditional statement is, I took the SAT. So I took the SAT. So my premise is I took the SAT. Therefore, I will go to college. Conclusion is I will go to college. Is this without the statement Zach said earlier? So take out that conditional statement. My statement now, if I take the SAT, I will go to college. Is that a valid argument?
No.
No, but it's not a terrible argument, right? Like most people that take the SAT probably want to. So let's say on our spectrum, It's about here. Sufficient assumption questions are asking us to bring in new information to get our argument from where it's at currently, and we want to add something that will make it rock solid. So we want a really strong answer choice. So what can we add to this argument that would make it guaranteed that if you take the SAT, you go to college? What could we say? So go ahead and take 30 seconds and think about what we could say that would guarantee that. All right, what did you say, Yamira?
So to guarantee, I would say you enrolled in your first semester. I don't know, because we're thinking about rock solid, not strengthen, right?
Rock solid. So we have to connect SAT to college. What did you say, Zach?
I said like a national survey conducted by the Princeton Review, like noted of the 57,000 high school students. I'm just making this like a huge stimulus answer.
Nope. Okay, so all we have to say here is for the assumption is all students that take the SAT go to college. Do you see how simple that is? If all students that take the SAT go to college,
then that makes it rock solid. Okay.
Makes it rock solid. Do you see how simple that is? How we bring in this really strong word? Because I said, I took the SAT, therefore I will go to college. How do we know that me taking the SAT is enough to trigger that I'm going to go to college?
Okay.
Well, if we bring in the information that all students that take the SAT go to college, it guarantees it. All right. So now let's think about necessary assumption. So necessary assumption starts with NE. So we're looking for what's needed. So this is different in the sense that we're not trying to get our argument to here. We're not triggering it to guarantee this. We're just looking for something that has to be true in order for this to stand a chance. So what's a necessary assumption that if I take the SAT, I will go to college? What's needed?
True.
What?
Is that something that has to be true?
Yeah, it's a must be true. What must be true in order for there to be a chance that I go to college? I took the SAT, therefore I will go to college. So one might be that the college I go to accepts SAT scores, right?
Okay, so when we're thinking of must be true,
well, it's in the sense that it must be true in order, like it must be true. So without it, our argument falls apart.
Okay.
So what happens if so let's say that what happens if this college I go to doesn't accept SAT scores?
Then you can't go.
Yeah, our argument falls apart.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a necessary assumption, is that the college I'm going to go to accepts SAT scores. Another necessary assumption is that I have all the other requirements needed to go to college.
Mm-hmm.
Because if
you have a high school diploma?
Yeah.
So with that. Okay.
Yeah, because if I don't have that, if I don't have these other requirements, my argument doesn't even have a chance.
Could we say like you got a good enough score on the SAT? Like would that be
your score is good enough to get into that college? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. So I show this chart a lot. And so we can see that our assumption questions fall into two different categories. So sufficient necessary is what we call a bottom up. So this is where we have our stimulus, we have our question stem, and we have our 5 answer choices. Think of sufficient assumption questions as super strengthened questions. Because what we're doing is we're bringing in an answer choice, new information that's going to guarantee our conclusion. As soon as we see that it's a sufficient assumption question, our mind should go to, our conclusion is valid. What do I need to add to make sure that this conclusion happens? So do we want a strong or mild answer choice?
I would say strong.
Strong, yeah. Think of it this way. Sufficient, strengthen, stronger. They all start with S. And why do we tend to want a strong answer choice?
Because sufficient is...
If we're trying to get to our rock, do we want just a mild answer choice? Or do we want a strong answer choice to get us to that rock solid argument?
It has to be strong.
We want strong. Like like if we go, I mean, this isn't really the case, but if we go past what is necessary for it to be rock solid, that's amazing. Like if we said every single person in the United States takes the SAT and goes to college, yeah, that's more than what we need, but who cares? Because it gets us past that rock solid argument, right? All right, so then on the opposite end, we have our necessary assumptions. So we have our question, we have our stimulus, we have our question, and then we have our answer choices. This is what we call a top-down question, where we're taking what we know in the stimulus and finding an answer choice here. So we have to stay between the lines. We don't get to bring in new information. So top down, we tend to want more mild answer choices because we're trying to find the answer choice that is needed for our conclusion to even have a chance. So we're not guaranteeing how it's different. We're in the sufficient assumption, how we're going up. We're bringing in new information to guarantee this conclusion. In this answer choice, we're just finding something that
no info
is needed. What is needed for this conclusion to have a chance? So if we go to the ice cream example where I say it's hot outside, therefore we should get ice cream. This is not a valid argument, but what is needed in order for our conclusion to have a chance? Is it needed that all people like ice cream? Or is it needed that some people like ice cream?
Some people.
Some. Why? Because it is not necessary. Our argument could be true that it's hot outside, therefore we should get ice cream, could be true without necessarily all people liking ice cream. But we need at least one person to like ice cream in order for our conclusion to have a chance, correct?
Right.
So we tend to want more mild answer choices for necessary assumption. Because it's like,
So necessary, I'm just trying to get a little bit closer. Where strong, I'm trying to get like all the way there. Should I think about it like that?
Yes, but needed's like, if our conclusion is true, what else must be true is another way to think about it.
Okay.
It's kind of like that unstated thing that needs to be true. So if I said another good example is, I live, here we go. Well, you do an example for both of those. I live in Ohio, therefore I hate Michigan. What is a necessary assumption for this argument?
That you, I don't know, that you live in, I don't know what's a town in Ohio. Do you live in some town in Ohio?
In Akron.
Yeah, well, that would be true. But what about I live in the US?
Okay.
Because if I don't live in the US, that destroys our argument, right?
Mm-hmm.
Living in the US doesn't necessarily get me any closer to our argument, right?
Okay.
It's just needed in order for our conclusion to even have a chance. Where what would be a sufficient assumption for this argument? I live in Ohio, therefore I hate Michigan. How can we connect these two?
Everybody that lives in Ohio hates Michigan?
Yeah, all people, look at you. If this is true that all people that live in Ohio hate Michigan, doesn't that guarantee that if I live in Ohio, I hate Michigan?
Yeah.
Excellent, great job.